So the Fed, according to this report, bailed out the financial system not with $5 trillion, but with $29 trillion when we were told 5. It wasn't just our banks and our system that they bailed out. They gave money all over the world. In other words, we're not just collapsing our economy, but we are inflating the world on a global scale. And you know what? When it all busts apart, guess who's going to be hated by the entire world? Us, for creating this problem.
Here at Liberty and Finance, we're licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. We are standing by the inventory, ready to make sure you get what you need, even into the wee hours of night and on weekends, because preparedness doesn't stop. Call us 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. Our guest is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals. Andy Schectman joins us this Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 for our weekly market update. Andy, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Dunnigan, it's good to see you again. Every Tuesday, it's like Groundhog Day, but that's tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, it'll be tomorrow all over again. And actually, there has been, it's funny because some of the comments we've gotten on a lot of our videos are that sometimes the message seems repetitive. And I know that part of that is that we both feel a sense of personal responsibility and a mission to make sure that we do all that we absolutely can to get the message out to as many people as possible that they cannot trust the powers that be, the keepers of our financial lives, and that's going to affect our families' futures. And to try to wake people up, we're trying to do what we can. Sometimes that means pointing out the road signs that we're passing along the way, saying, see that one? See that one? I told you. Yep, look, here it comes again. So these things that are happening are really changing our lives. And I think a lot of the last 2 years has wakened a lot of people who were otherwise thinking that all was well and that they could just, things would just keep on keeping on. And now they realize things can change convulsively and almost without notice. So we're trying to provide that notice. Brad Harris from Full Spectrum Survival, whom we have interviewed multiple times on our channel, says the official notice will always come too late. So we're trying to give the unofficial notice, but we're doing it from inside the belly of the beast. You're inside the industry, the precious metals industry, in this case, retail supply chain of that, to help give people an insider's view so that they can see beyond just the surface price action, that sort of thing, about what's actually going to be driving that, the causative factors that are a step ahead, forward, leading indicators, that sort of thing. If you could please give us your latest thinking, your latest research that you've been doing on what's really happening and what people really need to be aware of so that they can be aware and prepared.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way you phrased all of that. And we didn't really talk about any of this, but it fits very well. It's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about. And with Groundhog Day coming here, I realize a lot of the message that we have been talking about is repetitive. But as you said, there are certain things to me that stick out in terms of flashing billboards or signposts along the way that are very, very, very important. But in the spirit of Groundhog Day, I just wanted to go on a little bit of a rant because, I deal with this every day as well, talking to people who wonder why things aren't behaving the way perhaps that they ought to, the way that we would expect them to. So I want to take us back on a little bit of a journey back a few years ago. We'll go back to 2008 and go back and forth between there and here. And let's just think about things and why we want to own precious metals. Why I think that supply is going to be a key factor, why I say the things that I do. So let's start with a couple of assumptions. The first being, in my opinion, of course, that the Biden administration is hell-bent on spending us into oblivion. And they want, in their own words, to reinvent capitalism. And it seems as though we are hurtling towards some sort of economic collapse as we reinvent capitalism. They've told us that they want to build back better, that we must reinvent capitalism because capitalism is bad and it's corporate greed that got us here. In fact, just the other day, I'm watching Fox News and there's a snippet of Elizabeth Warren telling us that it's not about inflation, but it's about corporate price gouging, that for the reason for the high prices. We've talked about Powell and the things that he says. He said the other day that climate stress tests will be very likely will be a key tool moving forward. And he also said, when asked what the greatest threat to the financial system is, he said a global cyber attack. It just seems that they want to blame everything on the climate or on a cyber attack. And to me, when I hear all of this over and over and over again, speaking of repetitive, it seems to me that they're priming us for some sort of a major economic disaster or some major economic event. Perhaps this is when they roll out their new Fed dollar that they keep talking about. I mean, they've talked about doing studies on a new Fed dollar and on a Fed cryptocurrency. So let's just look at what's happened over the last year as an example, right? 1 year ago, January 2021, when we're just coming out of a lockdown, we're really in a lockdown, I guess you could say, we had gas at $2.50. Today it's $3.30. We had a 30-year mortgage at 2.95%. Today it's 4.06%. We had third quarter GDP back then at 33.1%, and the third quarter GDP estimate, growth estimate, is estimated to be at 2.3% this year. That's a 30% swing. And of course, we had inflation at 1.4%, and now it's at 7%. Now, those are just for the first 12 months of the current administration. But what's bothering me on top of these numbers that they've told us about is what they haven't told us about. In fact, what they've lied to us about. I want to talk about that for a minute. I mean, does it feel to you like we have 3.9% unemployment? I don't know about you, but have you gone to a fast food restaurant? Have you seen all of the help wanted signs all over the place? According to our buddy, your buddy and mine, John Williams at Shadow Stats, we are sitting at just under 25% unemployment. 24.8, I think is his number. 24.8. And these are all the people who are being paid to be unproductive. And does it feel like we have 7% inflation? Here again, John says that number is 15%. And that's with no products on the shelves, too. That's what Milton Friedman, the great Austrian economist, said is inflation. That's more money chasing fewer goods. And that's exactly what we have. We have wicked inflation. But how about inflation? You know, and this is what drives me to say a lot of the things I do. And I'll tell you, it's going through the roof. They're spending trillions of dollars, done again, trillions. And they've, at least what they told us about, right? So let's go back real quick to 2008, because I read something here the other day that absolutely blew my mind. And I think it's going to blow the listeners' minds, too, when I get to this really interesting point. In 2008, they told us that they spent $700 billion on TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program. Remember that? And $700 billion in infrastructure. Now, that $1.4 billion is pretty much what created the Tea Party. And back then, and that seemed crazy, people were going nuts that we would spend that kind of money. And then they bailed out the banks for another $3.5 trillion. I know you remember that too, right? So they told us in 2008 that they spent $5 trillion, but they didn't. Those numbers were sealed for 2 years. They felt it was too damning to let the public see those numbers, but in a matter of national security, at the end of those 2 years, they sealed them for another 10. And they kept them sealed for 10 years. And thanks to the Levy Economics Institute group, who went all the way to the Supreme Court with the Federal Reserve under a Freedom of Information Act, we found out that the Fed lied to us in a very, very big way. We're now finding out over 10 years later that it was not $5 trillion that they spent. In fact, it was a whole heck of a lot more. Let's talk about it for 1 second. They gave Bank of America, according to the Freedom of Information Act that has now just been released, $1.3 trillion. They gave Merrill Lynch $1.9 trillion. They gave Morgan Stanley $2 trillion. They gave Citibank, basically nationalizing Citibank, $2.5 trillion. And guess who's a co-owner of the New York Federal Reserve? Citibank. Doesn't seem like, to me, like maybe there's a little bit of conflict of interest there. So the Fed, according to this report, bailed out the financial system not with $5 trillion, but with $29 trillion when we were told $5. It wasn't just our banks and our system that they bailed out. They gave money all over the world. They gave 3.7 trillion to Japan, 1.5 trillion to the UK, 1.4 trillion to Germany. In other words, we're not just collapsing our economy, but we are inflating the world on a global scale. And you know what? When it all busts apart, guess who's going to be hated by the entire world? Us, for creating this problem. And, you know, if you take a look at what's happening in those countries, inflation in the United Kingdom is the highest in 30 years. In Germany, it's the highest since World War II. Japan just hit a 2-year high, but they've been inflating for a long time. But still, 2-year highs. But then again, let's remember, these are just the numbers from 2010 that we're just finding out about now. These numbers predate COVID. And the 10 trillion, which doesn't even account for the spending by the Fed, which we don't know. It's been sealed. But how about all the trillions in the repo market? And I think anyone who's wondering where inflation is coming from needs to realize that this Freedom of Information Act that just came out is showing us exactly where inflation is coming from. This is called modern monetary theory. And I guess my question to anyone out there who is wondering why I am so passionate about gold is what's next? Is it price controls? You're seeing them already talk about price controls in energy or food. Should we reinvent capitalism because capitalism is bad? And I just want people to know that where I come from, it is my opinion, especially after seeing these numbers, that inflation is going to wipe you out. It's going to wipe you out and impoverish an entire generation unless you get assets quickly. Because assets will do very well in this inflation-driven system. Liabilities will kill you. Debt will kill you. And this, to me, the big money has seen this for a very long time. And this is why the big money is transitioning into gold out of dollars. And, you know, one last point, we talk about cryptocurrencies. I just find it beyond interesting. People are trying to protect themselves in cryptocurrencies when Fed Chairman Powell says the two things that are bothering him the most, the two biggest threats he sees facing our economy is a cyber attack or climate change. I mean, how much energy does it take? What's the biggest knock against mining for cryptocurrencies? The threat or the act of it being bad on the climate or a cyber attack. Does it seem to you, or it does to me, that he's kind of hinting at cryptocurrencies? Because I tell you this, the Federal Reserve doesn't want to share their money creation abilities with the rest of the world. They want to be a one-man show. And I think what he's telling us is that be prepared for some sort of an event. And if it centers around climate change and cyber attacks, I think that's pointing a finger squarely at cryptocurrencies. So when I take a step back and I look at all the inflation that's being created, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that we weren't even told about, when I see the Fed chairman telling us that cyber threat and climate change is the biggest problem, when I see Elizabeth Warren and other politicians telling us we need to reinvent capitalism and it's corporate greed and price gouging that has created this problem, it tells me that we are in for a long haul, that we are nowhere near the end of this. And I just think that people need to understand where I am coming from is specifically rooted in these numbers, that if you don't have assets right now, if you don't have gold and silver right now, when this happens, when this reckoning happens, there's going to be a problem because we are at that crossroads. And if they really do get tough on inflation, like they're jawboning about, then you're looking at the greatest market collapse of all times in a Great Depression. And it's my opinion that they can never do that. So they will continue to inflate. And inflate what they tell us they're inflating will be minuscule to what they're actually doing behind the scenes. So in the spirit of Groundhog Day, I would just simply say to you, more of the same thing. You need to own precious metals because the road that we are on does not have a path home. Like we said a few weeks ago, heads you lose, tails you lose. Pick the path of least resistance, and that's where we're going to end up. And that's always been inflation.
You know, there's two things I wanted to piggyback off of that you said there. One is that the nature of the threats about which the leaders are warning us have changed. In the past, people like Ron Paul, Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute, and Mike Rivero from What Really Happened have come on our show over a decade talking about all wars are bankers' wars, saying that these pitting of one country against another. Oh, those are the bad guys. Now those are the bad guys. Yeah, you're supposed to, don't worry about those anymore. That doesn't matter anymore. Now you're supposed to worry about that. has been throughout most of the 20th century for sure, always fanning these flames of conflict between nations and fanning wars that then always go into the bankers' pockets. But if you look at the more recent things, just in these last few years, a global pandemic, global climate change, and global cyber attack, what's the common thread there? Common thread is, the new threat is going to be global in nature. So we need to have a spanning all countries. So no more borders of your ability to have sovereignty within your beloved country. No, everybody's got to march in lockstep. And we've seen that played out, the marching in lockstep over the past 2 years. So everything you're saying is just being taken, like in a 3D chessboard, taken to the next level. Now it's no longer the last war we fought. Now it's everybody against everybody. And a lot of us feel we're behind the enemy lines in World War III and wondering, how do we take care of our family going forward? The other thing that you mentioned is that even in the face of that, there will be misdirection about what the cause and the root source of that is. Who's pulling the strings? I remember vividly back when Nixon froze prices back in his term, there was talk about, this inflation was being caused because workers are demanding higher wages. It's those darn greedy workers. If it just wasn't for those workers wanting higher wages, we wouldn't be facing inflation. And here we're being told it's the failure of capitalism or whatever. We have to gut that and replace it with socialism or whatever, and corporate greed. So anyway, just be very aware of the narratives that are being spun and look for the threads of commonality between these. It's like, why is it that all the problems that are being proposed as the things we need to be doing, scenarios, role-playing, wargaming, are the things that are going to take a global response that crosses all national boundaries and is coordinated from a single source?
And real quick, Don, again, just to put an exclamation point, when you see this kind of deceit, when you see this kind of malinvestment, when you see this kind of inflation, and them hiding it, locking it away from the public for 12 years because we're not mature enough to hear the truth, that tells me that we ain't seen nothing yet. And I think when people are worried about what the price is doing in the face of what we're being told, remember that gold and silver are the canaries in the mine shaft. They are trying to step on gold and silver because it allows them to continue this facade, but it's getting harder and harder. It's like any lie that you tell. The deeper the lie gets, the more effort you have to employ to keep the lie going and to keep the truth from being found out. But this is a subsidy. This is why people should not be upset when the price isn't behaving the way it should. They should be thrilled that they still have a chance to continue to protect themselves, because when this blows up, and it will blow up at some point, if you haven't taken the steps, you're way too late and you're in trouble.
Yeah, I think that one point I want to key in on there is that the same people and the same power structures that proved they were not trustworthy then, when the problems were bigger than they'd ever been before, the global financial collapse of 2008, 2009, the remedy size that they told us, the amount of medicine it took supposedly to cure how serious the illness was order of magnitude more than what they even revealed to us. And so they wouldn't let us know what they were really doing. So those same people, now that the scale of the whole thing is already an order of magnitude larger on its face, and they're saying, yeah, but now because of FASB 56, all the government books are dark and so on. But trust us, we'll take care of this. We have the tools. We have the tools in our toolbox, says Powell. So the same people and the same power structures that proved themselves unworthy of our trust and that told us something that was absolutely on its face was a big fat lie a decade ago are now telling us to trust them again. It's an opportunity to learn from our past. Andy, in the face of all this, you have a weekly special for us. We'd like to give you a chance to say that before we have to let you go.
In an effort to continue to bring worthwhile product to your listeners at a good price, we have a couple of silver items this week to offer. We have, for the first time in, I don't know, a long time, we have accumulated a very large quantity of junk silver. We were able to buy a very large estate of 100 bags of pre-1965 silver. And so that's $100,000 face value of pre-1965 silver in stock ready to ship at $5.99 over the price of silver. That's dimes and quarters. It will be of our choice, and there is no better way to have utility in your precious metals than having some pre-65 silver. $5.99 over the price of silver, that's as good of a price as I've seen in the last year and a half. Also, we're bringing back the very popular 2022 Noah's Ark coins in both 1 ounce and quarter ounce variety. The 1 ounce, which come in boxes of 500, made by the Geiger Mint in Germany. Beautiful presentation, beautiful wood box at $4 over the price of silver. And the very, very popular, also in small mini 500 count boxes, the quarter ounce Noah's Ark 2022. And those are $2.50 per coin over the melt value, over the price of silver. So people who are looking for functionality and utility, not only would the pre-65 junk silver, which is always my favorite choice, be a great choice, but so too would be the quarter ounce 2022 Noah's Arks, and they do come in little mini boxes that hold 500 coins. Both great choices, all of it in stock, ready to ship immediately. And I know that's really the biggest issue when we run these specials is people want to know, is it in stock and can it ship right now? And the answer is yes, everything is ready to roll.
Andy, thank you for that. Our viewers look forward to these weekly market updates as well as weekly market specials. So thank you, as always, for bringing those both to all of our viewers here. And just this week, we passed 66,000 viewers strong here on Liberty and Finance, looking for added growth as we get more referrals. But also, guys, if you have not already done so, go to libertyandfinance.com, put your name and email address in on the left-hand margin. You'll get on our mailing list. And once you confirm that, once we send you a confirmation email and you confirm, we'll send you emails with every single interview, not only with Andy, but with all of our guests, so that you won't miss a single thing, regardless of which of our social media outlets, which we publish to 7 days a week at 9 p.m. Eastern, we'll be publishing to, and you won't miss a single episode. Andy, as always, just thanks for joining us here on Liberty and Finance.
Dunnigan, thank you very much. And Dunnigan, I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Have a great rest of your day and happy Groundhog Day.
Thanks, Andy. You too.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we will let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be double boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Elijah, my brother Kaiser, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.